I have a lot of things I want to get off my chest.
So I had probably the most controversial comment section I've ever had on my last video, and I get it. I'm not feeling particularly great about the update, and one of the things in the comments was that I was being overly negative about it as a whole. So, first off, no. Secondly, I said the update was a 4.5 out of 10. If I truly hated this update, I wouldn't even have given it a rating out of 10 because it just wouldn't have been worth it. What I've noticed about the reaction to this update is that the less you pay attention to the game, or the less you focus on what's actually going on, the more positive your reaction is to it. And vice versa. People who hardly play the game are being really positive about it, and people who have seen what's gone on the past few months really aren't so much. I've heard the words, "finally we get a good update," be thrown around a lot, and that really has let me know how low the expectations have been set by a lot of people. There are cool things in this update, but I feel like almost all of them have a big asterisk on them. If you're taking everything at face value from the trailers, then obviously this update is going to be awesome. It's very, very easy to make literally anything look dope in a trailer. But do you really think that's what it's going to be like in the game when it comes out? There's a lot of people going, new matchmaker, awesome, new map, sweet, new UI, looks modern, 300 rebalanced vehicles, that's amazing, tier 11, the future is now. And not once in that process are we looking past the surface. Once you peel a couple layers off of what you're actually looking at to see what you're actually looking at, it isn't nearly as attractive, and I can prove it easily. For starters, the new matchmaker is fantastic and is designed in a very good way with some actual thought put into how stuff should work out, like tank matchups. It tries to make +1 matchups at the worst, but +2 matches still happen. It limits the teams to just 5 TDs per team, which is great considering there's like 8 per team currently sometimes, and that almost completely ruins some battles on some maps. The reason I didn't talk about it much in that video is because this was announced 6 months ago, and we talked about the matchmaker more than a few times on this channel. I love that they're adding this to the game, and the only problem is this should have happened in like 1.0 or well before 2021. They changed how matchmaking works during 9.18, which was in April of 2017, and it would have been the perfect time to make a new system for the original big update. This is something that Sircon talked about many, many times back in the day, and it's probably one of the things that contributed to him being a War Thunder player now. He was one of the game's most popular CCs, heavily advocating for this all the time, and why it would be great for the game. They're finally doing it, but it has taken quite a long time to get around to it. This is a similar feeling with the old Garage too, but I don't hate the new Garage. I don't think anybody really hates the new Garage. And I like that it's actually, you know, a Garage. But I feel like we're going to be stuck with this for quite a while, given how long we've been stuck with the previous one. I really do like how it looks, and I'm glad we're getting something new, but we don't know if we're ever gonna get a change of scenery ever again. Like, we might just have this until the game excommunicados itself. The in-game armor model viewer is something players have been asking for an extremely long time, and that's the issue here. Having to use third-party websites that really don't get promoted, as well as the company themselves telling you to use third-party websites, puts a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, even if it was a genuine recommendation. Yet again, there's no reason this shouldn't have been in the game already, and it's many years overdue. Consoles had this forever, man. The changes to the UI were allegedly made due to the previous version still using Flash, which has been discontinued for quite a while now. Finding people to work on it proved difficult, so they decided to change it. And changing things for a reason like that is fine, considering, you know, it had to be done at some point. But the end result has to be good. The UI was immediately functionally worse in feedback testing, and received heavy negative feedback from the people in the closed test pretty consistently. Several comments on the official announcement video point this out, and a lot of them have been responded to with some not very convincing stuff. As has a lot of stuff with this update, but that's besides the point. Something can look as cool as possible, but if it's functionally worse, it's kind of concerning. They tried to modernize it, and maybe they did. But is that a good thing? Rebalancing 372 vehicles. Where do I even begin with this one? Well, for starters, this should really have been this instead. It's really easy to do the biggest rebalance in World of Tanks history when it is preceded by an exceptional drought beforehand. They're trying to pat themselves on the back for fixing a problem that they created and is caused by a long period of neglectance. We should have never gotten to a point where rebalancing 300 plus vehicles was necessary. That's just a fact. The other massive thing with this is that you and I both know 300 is just a number that sounds awesome, right? 300 is just a number that they can put as a headline that sounds good. It's a big, beautiful headline on a big, beautiful update. The largest rebalance in World of Tanks history, which is going to be full of stuff like this. This is a real patch note. And this is one tank out of 300, which includes a lot of tier 1 to 4 tanks nobody ever plays. Out of 300 change tanks, only like 30 of these are going to be meaningful in any remote way. They're also probably going to be counting stuff like the 3 Panzer 58s being 3 different vehicles. The higher the number, the more appealing it sounds. It's so they could put this picture of this collection of tanks in front of you, which looks super impressive. In reality, the mid-year balance changes are going to probably be more or as impactful than these end-of-year ones, and those only balanced 4 lines at a time, not attempting to rebalance the whole game like this. As of writing this script, they just released the rebalance page. You can go see this stuff for yourself right now. Almost all of these are basically nothing. Tier 10s have balance changes like this, and tier 1s have balance changes like this. So, yeah. The armor flashlight is a complete joke, and there is no upside to it. And before anyone says it's there to help new players are going to be sitting in the open looking for someone to shoot and get shot in return. And that is assuming they even know it exists in the first place. So the entire concept of this is bad, and nobody wanted this, and nobody asked for this, and I don't even know why we're doing anything related to it. It's just bad. Tier 11, to me, shows that they're just kind of out of ideas at this point. And since they aren't ready to cross the line of adding tier 10 premiums yet, they're going to release these tanks that are basically tier 10s, but with special abilities and more hit points. I'm not saying it will be bad for sure, but they are notoriously bad at launching stuff like this. And it will take forever to rebalance, especially considering they didn't even have the tier 11s on the closed test. They're just gonna guess in terms of the balance changes to them, because these tanks are basically untested. They've also stated that tier 12 will be coming at some point, so hooray. One new map. One new map. And the map we're getting was a map that did not win the player-voted recon test twice. But Wargaming really wanted to push this one to the moon, so we're getting it now. And sure, it looks awesome. Visually, it looks fantastic. But you know what other map looks awesome? Oyster Bay. Yeah. And not only are we getting just the one new map, but there are no map changes at all besides dynamic events to our knowledge. Just incredible. Why that's so significant, by the way, is by adding tier 11 and more dynamic events and the new matchmaker and rebalancing every vehicle branch in the game, their goal is to, like, in their own words, has been like revolutionize gameplay. It's a new era. We're going to revolutionize gameplay. The problem is they didn't even touch the actual gameplay part of the game. If the maps do not change, then everybody's going to be playing the same positions in mostly the same tanks, with battles going the same way. You can add all the stuff you want, but if the maps don't change, the gameplay won't either, and they just don't seem to understand that. And even in the super test, their map changes tend to be kind of scuffed, because a lot of the time, they're not actually fixing the problems the maps have. So I don't know if it's intentional or if this is just what they plan on doing with the maps, but it's just kind of depressing. The new mission campaign and PvE modes are cool, but again, late and still also kind of late. The Object 260 campaign was released in January of 2015. The 279 campaign was released in October of 2018. That was 7 years ago, which makes this at least 4 years late compared to the first time. Experienced players really haven't had anything to do besides grind for marks of excellence for many years, and as almost anybody can tell you, that gets old fast. So, maybe you hear all of that, and you still think I'm just being negative. about this whole situation, be it for no reason or seemingly no reason. Well, I've compiled a list of things from memory that Wargaming has done in the previous 9 months. You tell me if I'm being unreasonable with my reaction to this somewhat lackluster update. You ready? Here we go. Some of these are like public things, and some of these are semi-personal things pertaining to usually or mostly just me, but not even close to most of them. It's just a couple. Holiday Ops 2025, yes, we're starting in December, introduced the extremely rushed 3D attachment system. This in turn creates what we came to know as the gun bug, resulting in an incredible amount of ruined battles due to shells getting blocked by invisible hitboxes. This took 6 months to fix, and even then it was more of a workaround and not an actual fix. They introduced the British double-barrel tanks, starting with the Contradictious, which had 4 bugs, at least one of them technically still exists. The tech tree line culminates with the Can Opener, which is one of the most controversial tanks Wargaming has ever created, and with good reason. We've already done this song and dance once before with the Minotauro, and apparently they learned nothing from it because here it is again. They listed the premiere of The Future of World of Tanks in 2025 for 36 hours. This video gave us 0 real information and was a grand total of 58 seconds long, which in a premiere you don't know until the premiere is over. The title was changed from trailer to teaser. They resold a removed tech tree tank for $400, among other items, as well as teasing people with the first sale of the BZ-176 since it was first offered as a joke. The tank sold out in 4 minutes on EU and 12 to 14 seconds on NA, depending on who you ask. They have stated the tank will be available again in the future. Partnership number 1 of the year, if we ignore Jason Statham, was Rambo, an M103 copy tank with a different gun. Not really a bad thing on its own, but you did have to spend gold to get the tank, even if you grinded out the stages. That's nothing new, but I'm including it anyway because it is far from the only partnership we've had this year. Less than a month after Holiday Ops ended, they started advertising Lunar New Year boxes. They've done this in previous years, but it's just gonna get worse from here. So around this time, they invited all of the super big content creators to an in-person meeting. This included Quickie Baby, Des Games, and Talk to Me Goose, among others. If they're in the game as a commander, they were probably invited to this meeting. This isn't a bad thing, but I wanted to tell you just to plant the seed for something a little bit later. They forced account merging, which locked certain people's accounts and took forever to get it properly resolved. Even now, if I want to log on to my EU account, I have to log out of my NA account first, despite the websites having nothing to do with each other. The first assembly shop of the year happens immediately following Lunar New Year boxes, and they sold a Tier 10 Sniping TD, which not only made Tier 10 almost unplayable for several weeks, but also DOSed Wargaming's own economy servers, resulting in the EU server being essentially unplayable for over a day. Several people did not get the numbered style because of this, and they never will. The first Battle Pass of the year reworked the point system into using chips instead. There was no real upside to this change, and when I got an answer as to what the reason might be, the answer began with "I believe," which means not even the team really knows why they did this. What it does allow is scummier practices in relation to the point shop, such as offering things for odd numbers of chips, which makes spending them all impossible. They have since corrected this, but you know it wasn't an accident in the first place. A month after Lunar New Year boxes, they begin advertising more boxes for St. Patrick's Day. The preview video for the box contents included saying tanks were the wrong tier. The first tank coach video about a tank class is created, and while this takes several months to complete, they finally did all 5. The longest video of the 5 being the artillery video. Because, sure, why not? We get a special Battle Pass chapter for Peaky Blinders, which is the second partnership of the year so far. 3 days later, they advertised partnership number 3, which is Grozlund Panzer. Everyone was more or less okay with this because it is topical, but I still have to include it as a monetarily incentivized partnership because it is. They advertised their new game Steel Hunters, not to be confused with Steel Hunter, the Battle Royale game mode in World of Tanks. It is already shutting down after just 4 months. Good job, guys. In this whole mess, they started releasing most of their public NA team, including Tragic Loss and Commander AF. They also completely bypassed the Kino Tank Weekend, leaving it open for Steel Aces to sponsor it instead. They run their second trade-in event of the year already. For context, we're just entering the first week of April at this point. Around this time, I made my Detailing My Frustrations video, which contained many different reasons why I've been losing hope in this game, all of which are still perfectly valid. In that video, it contains pictures of messages sent by various people in the official Discord, one of them being a user named Deviros. About 2 weeks or so after that video was published, Deviros was directly banned by Check Tower, and the reasoning included several messages that predated Check's existence on the Discord server. At the time, he regularly watched my content, and what likely happened is, upon seeing that section of the video, went on a hunt specifically to find messages to get Deviros banned. The messages used as ban reasoning were all several years old, and the only way he would have ever found them is if he was specifically looking for them. The only reason he'd look for them is because of this incident here, where Deviros ripped into Ikibu pretty hard, aka Check's boss. Deviros is still banned on the official Discord to this day, although I doubt he really cares at this point. But this is the start of Wargaming looking for reasons to get rid of people, which you'll see more of later. They, big air quotes, reworked and redesigned 4 maps. This included a larger version of Ensk, which sucks, an entirely different version of Airfield, which really isn't better than the old Airfield, very minuscule changes to mines, which are both bad for progressing a battle, and Paris, which nobody can really form an accurate opinion of because it's such an arbitrary set of changes. The changes to mines also messed up the Onslaught version of the map, which persists to this day. For their 14th birthday celebration, they did nothing. They had in-game missions for some free stuff. Said free stuff was an A7E3, which the only person who ever cared about that tank was Spruce, and he already has it, and the ARMT, a tier 5 that cannot reach 1000 DPM. They picked the worst possible tank to give to people on purpose, and it was in Christmas boxes prior to this, so almost everybody already had it anyways. They added even more features to WoT Plus, because of course they did, the most hilarious of which being the Equipment Assistant, which revealed some less than stellar things about the player base's choices. They ran multiple iterations of their The Boys partnership, a couple of months apart. I don't really think anyone paid for this stuff because I don't see the T42 anywhere, but it still happened. The Content Creator Program was opened up to essentially everybody and allowed almost anyone to join it. Now, this sounds like a good thing, but in reality what it was just an attempt to bump their community engagement numbers up by quite a bit, without actually having to engage with them all the time. I could make this a quite lengthy section detailing all the program's problems, but I think I could sum it up with this one. There was a day where a few content creators were having a casual conversation with each other, and then they were told to stop because the channel was meant exclusively for content collaboration and nothing else. Keep in mind the chat was just named Content Insiders, which gave no indication that was the case. When they were asked for an off-topic chat where the group could actually just talk to each other, Ikibu himself responded to them with, and I quote, "Why?" That's the community team for this game. Also, someone was being semi-racist in the Discord channel in front of everyone, including employees, and they're still in the program, but I'm not. Overall, it's not a great look, but it's their mistake to make, not mine. Neon Dash is finally implemented after over 2 years since it was first teased in a video, and within 12 hours was made almost physically unplayable for most people due to griefers in various forms. This behavior of players was also openly condoned by Wargaming staff because they too were also bringing machine gun tanks, sitting at the end and stopping people from finishing the course. The one completely free and completely brand new piece of content we had gotten in 3 months was completely ruined for most of the player base within the first day, and that behavior was actively being encouraged by Wargaming staff. And I wish all of that was not true. 5 days after that was announced, they announced Assembly Shop number 2 of the year already. This time there were 2 tanks in an effort to get people to spend twice as much money. Both of them have been sold before, but not again until this point. And players never knew if they would actually sell them again. Around this time, a bug existed in the game which completely disallowed any communication with your team after your first death of the day. You had to completely relog to get rid of the bug, and it would return the next time you died, affecting any battle you were in, not just the one you died in. And surely this had nothing to do with the fact that they fired a ton of QA staff right before this. The final Manticore Onslaught season begins, and they forgot to add 6 maps to the matchmaking pool, which were advertised to be added. And I think they were even on the comment test, but never made it to the live server. They never did get added either, by the way. They never actually made it to live servers. Oh, here's the big one. They added tiered loot boxes to extremely, overwhelmingly negative feedback from every possible source, and they still had the gall to ask for constructive feedback. The official Discord was put into 2-minute slow mode for over 8 hours, which didn't even happen when the servers DOSed themselves, like I said earlier. Every single CC said this was a terrible idea and that doing this was exclusively bad in so many ways and that they didn't agree with it, except for Orzanel, but hey, there's always that one guy. Not only did everyone say this was a bad idea, but at that previously mentioned in-person February meeting, all of the big CCs told them it was a bad idea in person to their faces, and they still ignored them. They knew this was coming for 4 months, and they told the developers not to do it to their face, and they did it anyway. Many longtime players in the Discord server uninstalled the game on the spot and publicly announced it for all to see, and said they'd never come back, and they still haven't. The community team was making fools of themselves with some of the most ridiculous responses to perfectly rational messages. I couldn't possibly show them all. I know this is their job and their livelihood and stuff, but there comes a point where it is simply spitting in the face of your players to think that they're gonna believe this garbage. After this point, there is a super long gap in new content, but zero gap in monetized partnerships. Star Trek and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles both returned with $20 crew members each. I should mention as well that all of these pop culture partnerships they do all have 0 perk commanders. 0 perk crew members were said to be heavily discontinued due to their overabundance and how it caused a gap between veterans and newcomers. Meanwhile, every single event like this, you can just buy them. How is this not creating a wedge? But hey, $20 is $20, right? And you know what we need between those two partnerships? That's right, another assembly shop. To my knowledge, this one didn't even sell out because not nearly as many people bought tiered boxes as they expected people to. So people didn't have the resources to get the Griffin, which itself is just a nerfed Concept 1B turret on a Chief Proto hull. Not exactly intriguing to most players. The day after they announced the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles partnership, they announced that Lara Croft is coming to World of Tanks. Duke Nukem was announced shortly after, but this all got leaked weeks earlier by some random Asia server content creator, so okay. Aside from the fact there's a gross amount of AI generation in these character portraits, both were in timed Battle Pass chapters where it was almost impossible to complete both of them by playing, which was by design. Update 1.29.1 comes out, and, like a bunch of the previous updates I have mentioned, has literally no new content in it of any kind. It is a joke to even call it an update, because it didn't even update anything. It was just another frontline launch again. They ran another sale with the Rambo items, 6 months after the first one, which puts the number of pop culture partnerships at roughly 10 to 12 this year, counting the boys, Sabaton, Warhammer, and others. The total number of new tech tree lines this year is still 1, with the number of new maps at 0. Speaking of new maps, they do put a lot of map proposal changes on the Super Test server, and almost all of them are terrible. But what else is new? We'll talk more about them in a different video, but all you need to know right now is, here's current Pearl River, and here's the new one they want to make. That's the level of quality that almost all of these changes have, which is extremely low. Early in the development process or not, this is trash, and I have no problem pointing this out because it's that bad. Due to backlash for the Chinese region, or more just the partner developer for the Chinese World of Tanks server, Wargaming removes Ayuxin from the content creator program for a bunch of completely made up reasons to set him apart from Quickie Baby, who said more or less the exact same things that he did.
To everyone watching, my advice is very simple. Do not buy these boxes. If we collectively refuse to support this practice financially, Wargaming will have no choice but to listen.
Here's my final conclusion. If you are a tank collector in World of Tanks, stop. Just stop. I'm not saying stop playing the game, but I'm suggesting that you should stop putting money into this loot box system to be able to have a chance of getting, or even just keeping up with Wargaming's ridiculous content.
They'd never kick QB out of the program, but since they had a problem on their hands with a Ayuxin, they found some reasons to separate the two, and for those reasons, they kick him out. Remember back to earlier when I said they look for reasons to get rid of people? Yeah, I wasn't kidding. And it's probably gonna hit a few more people soon. And to top it all off, another assembly shop. So hopefully you can understand why I'm less than confident about this whole September update situation, right? This isn't gonna be some 2006 low-budget Hollywood movie where the kid that can't dribble a basketball in practice is gonna magically hit a game-winning three-pointer at the end. That's simply not how this is gonna go. Everything I just said is all stuff that actually happened. You have to look at this game without the rose-tinted glasses on and see what you're actually looking at. You need to look through the glamour and pizzazz of what the trailers look like and think about what this is actually going to look like in its physical form. Think about what these developers are known for and realize that it isn't for releasing good updates. They make something look good, even if it isn't, and then they sell it to you. They seem to have ignored essentially all feedback coming from the closed test, which basically means it exclusively served as another technical test, much like the common test does anyway. If feedback isn't being taken into account for what is supposedly the most important World of Tanks update of all time, in their own words, then I think we need to know all we have to about this game. It was stated by a community manager that they believe one day the community will realize it is better to work with the developers instead of against them. But to whoever may be watching this far into the video, I ask a simple question. Who isn't working with who? Because I know the answer, and I think most of you do too.